With the new Nintendo Switch on the horizon, Splatoon 4 has been the topic of discussion recently, and today I want to throw my hat into the ring. I'll be going over 10 changes I think Splatoon 4 should get that couldn't be an update for Splatoon 3. Not a lot of this is going to be focused on new ideas, mostly drastic changes to existing systems that I personally think would improve the quality of the game drastically. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more speculative content from me, and let's get started. So the first one is on the update cycle. Personally, I would like the update cycle to be longer. This typically has happened between every game, but my ideal lifespan for updates in a Splatoon game is about 3 years or so. And that might sound like a lot. We got about 2 years for Splatoon 3, assuming nothing changes, but I think it's warranted. There's so much stuff already in Splatoon 3, let alone Splatoon 4, that updates are now spread out among a lot of different forms of content. Things like Table Turf, Salmon Run, possibly single player changes if we get something like a roguelite mode, let alone the multiplayer. There's so many things that can change, and I also just think it's an interesting part about Splatoon to see how a game evolves over time. There are a lot of concepts that are available on launch and change with the game, and I think more time is often needed, especially when we go into stuff like kits that I'll get into later. However, let's jump focus to single player. While I've enjoyed all of the hero modes they've put in the game to some degree, I think it's time to retire that format. Octo Expansion and Side Order are two very different single players, but I do feel like they're much more new and fresh ideas, which is always nice to see from a DLC, but I remember the time where Splatoon 3 was coming out, and one of the biggest complaints was having the game be more distinct, and I think the single player is the biggest area this could happen. I would love the single player to be a fresh idea. Not everything has to be scrapped, but I just want some form of different format. The most common theory right now is just expanding on the roguelite idea that we had with Side Order, but making it much more fully fleshed out as a single player campaign, which would be fine. Anything like that is the direction I would want to do. But I think it's time for something new. And something else I'd like for number 3 is I would like the story mode to have more focus on the story. Now, Splatoon definitely does do a lot for its lore, but this is one area that I think Octo Expansion did well in and no other single player mode has done as well in. Having us care and follow the characters in the story we are in, seeing drastic changes or personality traits in the characters themselves, and I want it to be more visible. A lot of Splatoon's lore is hidden or hard to find. Hell, a lot of it isn't even translated. And while I think Splatoon has incredibly interesting lore, I don't think a lot of it shows itself to new players. And I think players being a character insert is interesting the first time, but it's happened so many times that I very rarely feel any investment to the character we're in. Neo Agent 3 originally looks a lot more like a scavenger type character, and they have Little Buddy, which is new. And while nothing is done with those, it's very little. I would love it if stuff like that became a bigger part of a character's identity. Number 4, more Salmon Run content, modes, and stages on launch. I really do enjoy Salmon Run. It's one of my favorite parts of the game, honestly, but I think it's a little outdated in the amount of content it has. We don't even have 10 stages in Salmon Run, and only one rotation with one base mode to play it in. For something that's been in 2 separate games, that's not a whole lot. And looking into Splatoon 3 scrapped content, we know there were plans for more with stuff like an underground mode. Likely, these are scrapped modes that I'll have to get into in their own video. But personally, I'd like to see more stuff for Salmon Run. This was another area where Splatoon 3 got criticized a lot, and while I'm not asking them to change base Salmon Run, I think having some different version of the mode could be more interesting, as well as create more options. If you see a Salmon Run rotation that you don't really like to play, there isn't another rotation. That is a thing for multiplayer now, and I think Salmon would benefit from it. Okay, let's get an obvious one out of the way. Better online and tick rates. Fun fact, Splatoon 1 has had the highest tick rate of every Splatoon game, and that matters a lot. If you ever see players doing things like teleporting, either on land or false falling as the game tries to predict their position, that's usually a tick rate issue, and the online is far too complicated for me. I don't know the best way to improve on it, and there's a lot of misconceptions on it, but I do think we can set the bar higher, and I think it's a big problem for the series. Number 6, I'd like the Splatfest format to be completely revamped. I think the idea of voting on themes and being on a team is a great idea, but the event itself hasn't changed very much. For some people, turf war at nighttime is just fine. I think little additions like the fizz bangs or things like tricolor mode are fine, but they don't really feel fully fleshed out. Splatoon 2 had a big addition in Splatfest, which were the shifty stations, and I critique them a lot more than most people. I don't think a lot of the shifty stations were very good, but I have to say they were cool. It was was unique ideas that they would constantly throw in to try to change things, and it felt very unique to the mode. And I want to see something more in that direction. I'd like to see some real unique experiments that can make Splatfest be more special. It can come alongside stuff like ranked modes in Splatfest if you want, but I want to see a more unique idea in place for it. Something that really changes how Splatfests are played. That's something Splatoon 2 did well that I think Splatoon 3 hasn't done as much. And if they want to do more special themes and gear like Springfest, I think that's also a great idea. Number 7, kit system. I've talked about the kit system in its own video. There is a lot to go into between what it does, how it affects the update cycle, limitations, and all of that stuff. It is a very integral part to the series. But one thing I'd like to reiterate from that video is I think the kit system is only going to get worse as we get more subs, specials, and weapons that are going to prevent people from trying out the options they want to use. I'm not saying we need to go fully into custom kits, but I do think kits should be changed. At minimum, it should mean having a lot more of them. At best, I would like to see some added form of customization that gives more options to the players. Number 8, I would like to see the devs be much more picky about specials. I would like to see things like special design given more of a focus. Limitations or flat out removing factors that people don't tend to like global range or invincibility, would be something I'd really like to see. There's so many specials in Splatoon 3, and while I like the variety, there's a lot of times where specials will either have a lot of overlap, like missiles and whale being so similar, or have issues that start a lot of problems with the player base, like Kraken's invincibility or Reef Slider's ability to sheath zone. I'm aware this is probably the smallest issue on the list, but there are so many really cool specials that Splatoon 3 did right. Stuff like Zipcaster or Crab Tank and Jetpack, just to name a few, that I think would shine a lot more if there was a more limited variety or if specials were held to a higher standard when being put into the game. I would rather have less specials of a higher quality than have the same quality but more specials. Number 9, the rotation system. Another old system I'd really like to get rid of. I will agree Splatoon 3 has made it better by having a lot of different rotations to choose from, but those have their own problems. The more rotations you have, the more you split player matchmaking. I mean, we have X rank in 2 entirely different regions, series, open, challenges, turf war. It's a lot. And I'm not saying you can't have a few different modes of playing the game, but I think the rotation system of having limited maps and modes available at a certain time and having a lot of rotations that splits up the player base, which hurts matchmaking, is just not a good combination. Personally, I really like systems like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, where the maps that are picked are somewhat random, but you can still vote on the few amounts you do get to decide what you want to use. I don't know what the perfect system would be, but I think, like with the kits, having a little bit more control in the player's hand is probably the right step here. And finally, number 10, the issue that's come to light the most in Splatoon 3, the stage design. Obviously, I don't want the maps to be hallways, and I would love things to return to around the end game of Splatoon 1 map design, where maps felt a lot more like playgrounds that were very open with a lot of different varieties for options while having unique gimmicks. And Splatoon 3 somewhat went there, but I would like to see it fully leaned into. Stages like Ramen, Marlin, or Lemuria, while having improvements, still do have areas where everyone's funneled into a single location. And I think another issue can be map and mode combinations. Trying to design maps for 4 different ranked modes, plus Turf War, plus whatever new mode Splatoon 4 could introduce, because we probably would get one considering Splatoon 3 didn't have one, is gonna make it hard to design maps that work for all of them. Maybe it would be a lot better to have maps that are only available in a few modes so that you can build more around those layouts. How good would a map layout be if it was designed around moving objectives like Tower Control and Rainmaker? You could probably do a lot more to make the modes feel better on those stages. Ideas like that and more open stages in general are what I would like to see. So that's my subjective opinion for everything. But I'd love to hear what you guys want. Splatoon 4 is still a ways away, and we have no idea what's going to happen. But I figured this would be a good time to get out what I personally would like to see changed. Thanks for watching, everyone.